Yep.
Yes, mate.
Mog, I don't know if you speak, but we don't heard anything. Yep.
It's just restarting Discord. See if we can get some sound out.
What about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, for that. I thought I was suppressed. So could you hear me at all? Did you ever hear me, or was that Doug you were responding to when he's? I thought you could hear me.
No.
There I was still speaking then. In that case, let's share my screen. I mean, this happens to the best of us, as we've found out. Let's get rid of that selection. This screen here. I just wanted to delay until 2 minutes past. So everybody can hear me. Let's get out the chat here. If anybody would like to ask questions, there's obviously the chat. And then later on, if people really have something that can only be asked via voice, I'm sure we can let you up on stage. I just want to introduce some of my team here. I'm going to bring you up on here as well, Templar. A lot of people have made a lot of this possible. We've got Doug Sillers, who is basically public me for should I die in an inconvenient boating accident, and now knows way more than me about dTao, the code, dealing with you guys on a day-to-day basis. He really is indispensable at this point. So look out when you cross the road, Doug. Also indispensable, we have Ben, our chief indexer and data scientist. If data needs pulling from the chain and preparing for you guys, ordering, working out whether it's right, wrong, where it should be, and coming up with the wonderful bits and pieces that allow us to offer our enterprise grade API, it's probably Ben who is responsible. And then we have Dubs, who is responsible for making sure, I should say, the site doesn't go down, but the overall site architecture, nodes, and a lot more that you'll probably find about in the near future. But this is not a call about that. So yeah, there's a lot of my core team. There are many others behind the scenes. There are some stellar front end devs who are probably having lunch with their or dinner with their families. And at this point, yeah, I really have a very strong team behind me, which has enabled us to do and be where we are. So looking at the new Taostats, and really what I wanted to do was to use Taostats as a vehicle to take us through dTao, because I think a lot of people obviously with dTao have been slightly blown away, confused, hesitant, maybe not so much, wondering what the data means. There's a lot of changes and a lot of things that we see as subnets go from being these kind of network entities to suddenly being their own evolving ecosystems. And of course, many of us come from crypto backgrounds and will be very comfortable with a lot of the terminologies around subnets essentially being their individual entities, but a lot of us, it'll be a very new experience, and it will seem at times overwhelming and daunting, talking about liquidity pools and volume and slippage and all of these things. So this is what we tried to make as accessible as possible. So without any further ado, I think what you find from most of Taostats, other than seeing that we have started to move away from our orange in favor of this nice red, thanks to our wonderful new creative director who is not on this call. And what we've got rid of from here is the emissions table. So having a look at where all historical weights were set. We have actually kept it. Historical root is there. You can go into the analytics if you're feeling nostalgic, or you want to have a look at where validators actually assign value before dTao. I thought that was quite a nice thing to keep for a little while. And in its place, what we've actually added down here is the global transactions table. And what if you sit here and monitor this all day as it's live, you will see that people are aping into dTao and buying and selling, and it's certainly not a stagnant network in terms of transactions. Now, we've called these transactions. Are they transactions? Yes, they are transactions. You'll see very often we refer to them as buys and sells. This is, I guess, in line with the narrative that each subnet's token is a token in many ways, although it's not independently pegged in pools against anything other than Tao. And there's yet to emerge products that allow EVM or pools outside of BitTensor. At the moment, everyone's kind of going through the core pools. These things will probably arise. And this concept that you are buying and selling them very much ties in with how they are used. So we didn't want to really, this is what used to be called delegation, but now they work very much like if you would have seen Dex Screener or any DEX. This is what we're trying to show within these transactions. And this table actually appears in a number of places. You'll see it on people's individual account pages, you will see it on the individual subnet pages, and you'll see it here. And what we intend to do is to add a great deal more transactional data. This is just, and this is, I think, what we have to iterate on this call. The launch on Thursday was, well, it was smooth. It was very smooth, especially in front of the curtain, shall we say. But behind the scenes, it was, I'm not going to say chaos, but it was highly, highly stressful. Anyone who would have developed on the testnet would be aware that building something for testnet data when there aren't live validators on every subnet, there aren't miners filling the Metagraph on all of the subnets, and there aren't thousands of retail users trying to delegate, undelegate their Tao ape into subnets, is, yeah, it is a very, very different experience. And what we had to prioritize was making sure data was stable and accurate. So there's a whole bunch of features that we really want to add that we haven't yet. Priority had to be stable features and accurate data at this point. So that's where we are, and I think we are very happy with the data. We feel that it is accurate for everything that we're showing is correct. There'll be a couple of bits and pieces, but I think we've worked through most of it today. And yeah, so we're not showing anything that is incorrect. And so the first thing we're really going to look at, we've got subnets, we're going to look at validators, and then we'll look at an individual subnet, individual validator pages, so they're the main ones, and then we'll have a look at the delegation app and behind the scenes. So subnets is where it's at now. I wonder how long this menu will last. You may notice that we haven't had any more than 64 subnets. This is because the registration cost right at the bottom, it's now down to 1,213 Tao. The reality is that registration is no longer a locked cost. It is, I should ask Doug on this, is it recycled or burned? Ready for a question. Recycled or burned, Dubs or Ben?
It's the same thing. Yeah, recycled and burned is it's the same thing.
Burned
It
is
is.
removed from existence. Recycled means it will delay a future.
It goes back into circuit. Yeah,
it's recycled. Yeah, it's right with recycled. Thank you, Adele. It is recycled. And so whilst that's great for the network and subnet registration will further delay the halvening, it means that the price you pay to register a subnet is the price it costs you, and it's an operational cost. We have had a lot of talk internally about what we think that first price will be when someone pulls the trigger. I'd love to see guesses in the text chat. This is what people think, either in a dollar value or Tau value, that new potential subnets are willing to part with in order to register. It's a very interesting thing, but at the moment, no one has pulled it at 1.2k Tau. So let's see. We would have also adjusted the emissions graph, but given that this, I actually quite like this, historical emissions and now how they have switched over time. But I think this is going to take a week or two before we start to see more consistent data and start to see how it evolves as the emissions start to settle. Should be very interesting. But this is actually a chart that you would have been used to in the past. So now what we have are the 64 subnets, or 65 because we include root in there, and for each one we have the subnet. Let me just refresh this because I messed it up with my there you go, constant moving of the browser. So we've got the subnet. As you mouse over, you can see the name. I know there's going to be confusion over the coming months with the names, but the network has the names for them. I prefer the number and the name of the subnet. I feel like subnets brand names will speak for themselves, but that representation is there, and they do make for some nice fancy lettering. And then we have the emissions and the price, and the emissions price and also market cap. And this is obviously you're guessing 350 first reg. That's a lot of Tau, Keith. What is that in current Tau prices? 360. It's 126k. You think they'll pay for the first reg? That's a lot of dollars to part with. Well, let's see. I'll put that on there. I was thinking somewhere, I think people think it'll hit 100, and I think somewhere between 100, 150 Tau was my estimation there. Yeah, I'm with Dave on this. So yes, we've got the emissions. Now, emissions are what we were used to seeing. But we also have, and this is how this is ordered, the market cap. And whilst the two are related and the price, you will notice a slight, should we say, indiscrepancy between them. So you'll notice, for instance, that 19 has 3.98% emissions, which is lower than 8, which has 4.3. However, it has a higher price and a higher market cap. This is because due to the trading, it sometimes takes a little bit of time for the emissions to catch up to from the price. So what you'll see is that over the last 24 hours, Subnet 8 has gone down 1.2%, whereas 19 has gone up, coincidentally, 19%. This has caused it to have a higher market cap and a higher price. And if this level of demand is sustained, then the emissions will catch up. But it's not an instant switchover. These are statistics I've actually been watching. It's been quite interesting to see. Obviously, as this is so new, nobody has 7-day data yet. There is a lot of fluctuations, you can imagine, and we're experiencing some very interesting phenomenons. I feel we should look at a random selection of subnets. I feel it's only respectful to look at the top two. This is interesting, Doug. Someone said you can't open these in a new tab, and they're right. They're actually right. You can't Apple click on those. What have we done? We do need to fix that. So apologies to the person who I said just tell them to command click. So we're going to have a look at, let's look at Targon. It's the first subnet, the highest subnet at the moment. We decided to, in fact, let's do both. So I can't even copy the link anymore. That's terrible. I can do it this way. Tell them to use a menu. Targon shoots. And what other subnet should we look at? Let's look at 8 prop trading. I think they did interesting data. So just looking through here, obviously the hourly change, 24-hour change, and weekly change, the market cap, which is the price of the token times the number of the amount of those tokens in circulation, the 24-hour volume. Now this was a very interesting one, especially in the first 24 hours, because people were saying to me, well, how much Tau is being thrown into this pool? How much are people actually burning, but aping in order to get these emissions up? And in the first 24 hours, you could really see, and Targon has sustained somewhere around 2K Tau per 24 hours. Now we've got past the initial phase. Some of that's buy and some of that is sell. So it's not all buy, but it's certainly in the first 24 hours, there was a lot going in. I'm really looking forward to better, more expansive data on this, which at the moment, if we were to look at Targon, we see the 24 hours. So we'll have a look at this data. We see all of the transactions, all 12,678, and you can grab them all in the API by all means. But I want us to get some sort of more comprehensive data on here beyond the amount of buys and the amount of sells, the buy volume and the sell volume. And what's very interesting here is we have 173 buys, but only 18 buyers. And you'll find that with a lot, because the trend you will see, I feel like, Doug, we should also be making notes. That column is still cutting off. We have to stop that. What the trend you will see is there is a lot of buy action, but from not as many participants as you will see. And if you watch this data and you see it coming up, you can see consistent transaction after transaction. And this is no way limited to Targon. You'll probably find this is happening on all subnets that are having, you can see it's probably the same people building up positions in subnets that they think are strong. And so this is what was spoken about in the call at the beginning in terms of, we call it bot traffic, but people writing scripts to get small amounts of alpha over and over. I'm going to try and not show you. So trading data is 24 hours, Dave. Yes. I'm going to try and not not have an opinion, which is difficult for me. But I will try and not have an opinion, just sort of look at the data and think of ways that how we can, what the data is, and then allow people to interpret it as they will. But I feel like looking at the number of individual buyers on a subnet versus the number of buyers is a very interesting one, as well as obviously the volume statistics. And yeah, that's something I've been keeping an eye on to see at what point will, if there are smaller groups who are continuing to buy to sustain price, when will they stop? I haven't gone deeper because I haven't had the time to start looking at who the top holders are in each subnet. So within Targon, top holder has 933 Tau. Within Shoots, the top holder has 790. So you can, and you'll probably find, you should check if that's the same person. Let's have a look. 5DY. It's not. There you go. I mean, obviously, people can have multiple addresses. I haven't had the time to go and do more detailed data forensics at this point to try and come up with wonderful theories. I'm sure there are people doing so. It's just important to understand how the trading data is flowing within the network. We're currently showing 15-minute intervals by default. I intend to switch to hourly by default. I think we like an hourly, but I'd like this to be filled. Of course, anyone who's ever used TradingView before can switch between hours, days, and anything like that. Obviously, the daily price isn't going to be particularly interesting. You can see the huge spike on the first day, generally a sell-off, people starting to pick up and purchase again, and then a balancing. But if we switch that into and this is, I mean, this chart that we look at here, whether we look at it on the hourly, whether we look at it on the 15-minute, the scales are slightly different for each subnet, but the trend is the same. And what seems to be happening is a baseline is starting to be established. Now, I am not giving out financial advice on this call. I'm just looking at what's going on the charts and seeing this trend. Where this goes from here will remain to be seen, and it's very interesting. So let's have a look at some of the data. I'm going to use, let's go back to using Targon. So the first thing we'll look at is we have obviously up here the standard data we expect, a brief description of the subnet, some social links. We will be switching to what we call chain identities. Currently, all of the subnets are populated from a JSON file that we operate. Subnet owners can go and update that themselves, or they traditionally would have sent us an email or a message in Discord, and we would have updated it. One of the things that's been fixed for this release of BitTensor is the use of chain identities. This means that subnets can actually go and verify with their key and set their identity themselves and add a bunch of information. The more information that we want to put on Taostats, we can submit PRs to the BitTensor core to have additional information put on there. So there'll be website links, potentially increased social links. But for now, the key one is obviously the name and the GitHub link to go and find the code. And very soon we will have also the ability for subnets to manage that data themselves within Taostats and within the chain. Then we look at the price. The price is in Tau and in dollars. Obviously, within dTao and within the BitTensor network, currently all subnet prices are denominated against Tau. Although we give US dollar equivalents, and when we actually looked at the subnet page, there's a toggle for those that want to see what the market cap is in a currency that they can quickly equate to. You know, Targon currently has a $3 million market cap. Shoots 2.7. Now we're used to assessing value of projects within the blockchain space, within the AI space, so we can assume whether these are fair valuations. Of course, the other thing we then have to look at beyond the current market cap is the fully diluted valuation. And what does that mean? This has become a lesson in crypto, isn't it? Sorry for those that of course know this. But you have to bear in mind that the max supply of each of these dTao tokens is 21 million. We can do this every day, Keith. And the current supply has only just started issuing. So the circulating supply of Targon is 46.11k alpha tokens. That's only 0.22%. So what we're looking at here is we're saying, well, if each of these tokens is worth $65 for this particular valuation, but we've only got 46,000 of them, if all 21 million were in circulation and given the same value, that is the fully diluted valuation. So with a fully diluted valuation, everything emitted, we're saying, hey, Targon is worth 1.38 billion. I am not giving financial advice on how we perceive fully diluted valuations in terms of deciding whether something is a valid investment or not. These are the statistics. That is what the market cap is, the current token issuance times price. The fully diluted is the current price times the total issuance for, or the max supply, which in this instance 21 million. Another one that's very interesting to look at is volume and volume against market cap. Volume is the, we can explain individual alpha token APY is calculated. Yeah, I'll get to that. So volume is essentially the total dollar value of all trades on this particular subnet. Now we show them by default in Tao here. On Targon, that's 2.23, so 2,230 rounded up. Tao, which you can see here, is 805, so almost $1 million in volume. That's very, very impressive for a single subnet. 725k on shoots. You can really start to looking at Efficient Frontier, 1.78 million in volume. That is very impressive. On Root, in the last 24 hours, 24 million in volume. That's staking and unstaking, or delegating and undelegating, because root action is now perceived as a trade per se, or a transaction within dTao, so we can actually see the flow of root transactions. Obviously someone has been either, well, by the looks of the chart, aping into Efficient Frontier. Yeah, as we come back, let's go back to the market cap. So that shows us the volume, and looking at the volume against the market cap is also a very interesting metric. It's, if you look at the total market cap and the volume against it, it shows you essentially the how do you say, the amount of supply changing hands in relation to the actual accessible supply. So within the last 24 hours, almost a third of the value of Targon has been either changing hands or being acquired. Then we can look down, and this is where things start to get interesting. Alpha in the pool and Tau in the pool. And what you will see is subnets that have a higher emission and more demand, i.e. more purchases being made, will have more Tau in the pool. Now, Doug, do you want to jump on and I'm going to surprise you, and you don't have to, but the implications of what that means as to how to read into the Tau in the pool versus the alpha in the pool, because I know there's some beliefs that obviously if there is more Tau in the pool versus alpha, one is a good buy, one, and this is not something that I know particularly so much about. And Namare was talking to me about it when looking at Efficient Frontier earlier. Let's bring them in. Where is it? Where's that volume? Let's see if we can see it here. As I say, I don't want to give the trading advice. So no, there's still a Tau in the pool, alpha in the pool. If anyone is more, shall we say, specialist in what that means from a potential price, voice.
I wouldn't say specialist, but the original design, the more Tau was in the pool that drove your emission, it was direct. So if there was 100 Tau across all the pools and there was 10 Tau in yours, you would have 10% emission. That was the original design. They've changed it to be based on moving price, so there's like a delayed effect, but it's still effectively the same thing. It's just, it's not always quite as simple, and well, it's definitely not as simple in the maths.
Yeah,
but the more Tau goes in, the higher your price goes. The higher your price goes, the higher your emission goes. However, the thing that makes that less simple when you're looking at the page, when you could see someone with more Tau maybe doesn't have the same emission, that's because of the moving average, and it's a little delayed over time.
Yeah,
but
I know what it was
Yeah.
now that I wanted to explain. So Ben Spencer's day is being interrupted by me, not having me allow us to send us. So exactly. So if we have a look at the Tau in the pool, in this particular subnet, it's 15.34%. And we come back and have a look at their emissions. Doug, can we make a note to add emissions to the single subnet page as well? Their emissions are 14.48, but their Tau in the pool is 15.34. This means that if the current buy pressure is held, then their emissions will move towards this. But there's also a chance that there is more Tau in the pool, and actually, you can get, it will be a good time, shall we say, to take profits, because they may not stay at that proportion, which I believe is what I was being shown with. Where has it gone? This one, Efficient Frontier, earlier today. Is that they had 1.7% Tau in the pool, but where is their volume? And it's all up here at the top. That's in Tau. But their emissions are only 2.42. So there's a big discrepancy between their emissions and the Tau in the pool. Now, again, this depends on whether any buy pressure is sustained or not. It's not trading advice, but this differential between the amount of Tau in the pool and the current emission is something that people are watching. I think that is also true. Yeah, we'll get to the slippage side of it as to if there isn't enough Tau in your pool. So in this pool, there is in Targon, there's 3.74k Tau. I saw a EMA price. Yep, Doug, let's add that to the list. Everyone's calling for the EMA. The EMA is not available within TradingView with a little bit more data. I think they should be available. What would you like, sir? There you go. You can have an EMA. It's TradingView. That's why we use them. You can get them all in there. You can draw as many lines as you like. I believe that's what you're after. Oh, it's at the bottom. It's here, isn't it? There you go. Thank you. Who made this site anyway? I look forward to you, Dave, publishing lots of charts with lines on them. I've made that look horrible. So there are a lot of metrics that are being studied by people. You'll learn very quickly. I'm not a trader, thankfully. But looking at the amount of Tau in the pool, so I actually did see, there was a tweet by Social Tensor today, about an hour or so ago, speaking about the upwards price action of their subnet, which is great. But the next thing I then went and looked at was that there was only 69 Tau in the pool. So that's great, unless I wanted to ape in 100 Tau, in which case that would be a not a wise trade, shall we say. And again, Tau in the pool 0.69, emission 0.21. So we can see an imbalance there. Interpret that as you will and make actions accordingly. So these are things to sort of to look at and understand. Let's come back to subnet 4 because it's got the most liquidity. When looking at the amount of alpha in the pool, the amount of Tau in the pool, and the balance. And this will start to creep up. This is data that we are very used to seeing, buys and sells, buy volume, sell volume, etc., etc. And down here at the bottom, we have the sort of standard subnet data we're used to, the emissions, what the emissions are generating per day for this subnet denominated in Tau. So what the owner is making per day in Tau, what the miners are making per day in Tau, and the validators. So those amounts are quite nice to see. Of course, these are paid out in alpha, but if you're going to make comparisons between subnets, it's useful to see these within Tau. The current registration cost, what the subnet is recycling per day, and the UIDs now, rather than just showing how many miners, how many validators, I think the most useful thing that people wanted to see was, is the subnet full or not? So when we look at subnets like Efficient Frontier, who their design means they don't fill their entire subnet, you can see there are only 162 participants out of 256. Again, that depends very much on subnet design as to how you interpret that metric. I'm going to come back to Targon. Now, the next thing we've done on this page, just for a moment, I'm going to ignore, and actually we're on the trading window, why not? This is our basic trading window. We have two ways that you can buy and sell or balance your dTao, your alpha allocation. This is the first, and the second one is the Delegation app through Dashboard. We will probably also bring you a kind of personalized portfolio alternative to balancing and doing things as well. We want to satisfy everyone's needs, but these two were the most important. And this one is pretty simple. It's I have Tao in my wallet and I either want to buy or sell the alpha token. So here I am with, I've got two wallets on here. This is the one I'm going to use for the demo. And you can see here I have 2.0851 Tao available. I want to buy some Targon. I have two options. I can either enter in the amount of Tao that I wish to spend or the amount of alpha token that I wish to acquire. In this particular instance, I want 1 Tao's worth. That's going to get me 5.52 alpha, and my slippage is very low. If I wanted 10, you'll see my slippage is also very low. Well, even for 100, it's not bad. You can really ape in. I'm not aping in. I've only got 2.085. And you can see as this goes up. So let's go for something better. 11.759. Doug, please note, color of slippage should change in this one like it does in the other one. We need to change the slippage color. Testing live. That slipped us by. And all you would then do, and there are two things to bear in mind. We wanted to make this very simple, and Mog believes that, let's go smaller, that you should just buy. However, it should be worth noting that there are two things here. One of them is your slippage. These have now been updated to maintain. So if you change your validator or change your slippage, it will maintain that within your cookies on your browser. So you can change your validator to any validator. It's a strange coincidence that we felt Taostats and Corcel should be the default. Who knew? We're running a business. There you go. So you can now buy. And this is the most important window. And you'll see this on both of our delegation apps. You will get a confirmation at this point, and nothing. And this is exactly what's going to happen. 1.105 alpha for 0.2 Tao. This will change every 12 seconds. If you keep watching it, it will update with every block as the price updates. And here is your slippage. I actually put this as the last thing on my keyboard before I did this. I hope. No, I didn't. Right, well, there's only a local password for my machine, and it's not that. It's that. Ha ha ha. Don't know if you could see that on the thing or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to trash this wallet afterwards. It will broadcast, it will go to block, and then it will confirm. We will, and this is what we expect. And you can essentially buy and sell your alpha. Now, this is great, but it means you have to sort of be aware of what Tao you have in your funds and what alpha you have and switch between them, which I'll show you very, very shortly. And your transaction is successful. Take a little moment for it to update down here. And of course, with that same rationale, I can now come in and I can sell that Tao, which I'm going to do in a different window. Actually, I'm going to sell it because I just want to have only root stake for the next part of the demo. So we're going to just sell that and come into the window. Let's go back onto 4 so we can have a look very, very quickly. Down here, you can see the transaction was there. Or was there a second ago? Just saw it come up. It's this one 1 minute ago. Wow, someone's buying quick enough that they are faster than us. Going through to this account. And this is the account that I've been using for testing. Now, the account page is something that we have not updated yet. There is a full rebuild for this account page coming, I would say this week. I'm pretty certain to say this week, possibly even by Wednesday. It was in the designs, but because we needed to just see how things played out a little bit and make sure the data was good and not rush through an incorrect account page, This is essentially the old account page with some extra bits in there. And most importantly, although it doesn't look amazing yet, at the bottom you have your balance in all of the various subnets. We have some issues where we just need to clear the zero balances out from there. Dave, we shall start this conversation and I'll bring you into someone to discuss all of the intricacies of EMA calculations. Bear in mind we're using the trading view default setup, but yeah, we can have this conversation happily. I want to make it as good as possible. Doug, maybe you can start a conversation with Dave and bring in Dubs and maybe Rhys or Jeff, so we can adjust trading view to make the EMAs, and Ben as well. So let's start that after this call. Was DCA discussed? No, Loy, I haven't discussed trading strategies just yet. I'll do that when I get onto the Delegation app. So at the moment, I'm just showing that you can do it, that you can come into your account and you can see the balances. And this is going to be updated very, very soon. I'm not going to demo the Figma. It's going to look nicer than this, and it's going to show all of your subnet balances. You can see them there. And if you wanted to check your subnet balances, we also have, my first moment aping into that, so I don't have a history on it. I did have some 19 and I sold it before this call, so it was all empty. So what you can see here for each subnet is the balance in tau and the balance in alpha. And this is actually sum of all subnet. Yep, Keith, we have that has already been requested, and the sum of all subnet prices will be at the base of the subnet page, probably within the next 24 hours. It wasn't on this morning's list, so it only made it to the mid-afternoon list. Now, I found this one to be quite interesting because what I could see here, especially if I wasn't making any purchases, was that the tau balance changed while you could see my alpha balance was just going up organically with delegation. And what I was watching was the value of tau when it peaked and when it dipped, and when it peaked and when it dipped, and actually understanding, I mean, and again, not financial advice, but making you understand when the moments were and how your portfolio essentially peaked in value. Now, at this point here, my portfolio was worth 3.25 tau, and a very short period later, it was suddenly worth 8.46. And then not too long later, it was worth 5.6. So, another one, Doug. Time on this graph, because everything's the 16th of February. Alpha amounts are cut off, not showing the full amount. No, we have seen that, Louis. It is a bug that we already flagged up at the beginning of this call, that here at the bottom, here, it is cutting off. We need to make those a little bit wider. So there we go. Now here's an interesting one. Let's see if that comes up again, this error. This is an error that I've seen a couple of times where when trying to sell everything, there's an error. And this is something we're working on. I was going to cover it when we got onto the Delegate app. I didn't think it was actually happening very often in here. And what we found as a solution, and I hope it works now as a solution, is if you just leave a little bit of dust, you don't get the error. I know that's a crappy solution to give you right now, but in any times where it's failing, instead of, if you're trying to sell everything or stake everything from a balance, just leave a little bit of dust, whether it's 0.01 as I did in this one, and you will find that the transaction goes through. We are working through that. It's to do with the way the transactions, you can see there, where the transactions are packaged. I know it's not ideal, but we'll have it sorted by the end of the week. I should have dropped that we have already fixed ledger support for Talisman and various other bits and pieces and bug fixes today. But there's some that we're getting through. So what I wanted to actually do before I get into a trading talk and go on to the Delegation app was actually just to show you a couple of other bits and pieces which are very important to people who are using Taostats on a day-to-day. And one of the biggest rethinks, I would say, but also I would say a precursor to a redesign. Namare told me today, why can't you just make the subnet metagraph full screen rather than the chart is very nice to have this. There will be a full screen button for the metagraph, so you can get rid of all the other data and you really can see it in full wide. I'm now just going to make my monitor even wider to show you all of this. But yes, we will be no, I can't see any of your comments, but that's fine. So this is the new metagraph. It's not going to look like this for very long because we're going to update it. There's redundancy. I believe that we should split up validators and miners because there's a whole bunch of data being shown for validators that's irrelevant to miners and vice versa. So I'd like to tailor it and show the validators in one section and the miners at the bottom. And it'll enable us to show a little bit more helpful data. Because you will notice that the miners virtually all have all of their stake in alpha and the validators have a balance. But what I want to look at here is what we get when we drop this down, which is now an optimized way of looking at, we call it family relations within a metagraph. Because of course there is a whole load of child keying going on. And you don't always know who is running a key and also what now makes up this wonderful value called stake weight. So stake weight. Stake weight, your stake used to be the total that a validator had staked to them, which obviously they would then deploy in full on a given subnet. So we're going to look at this particular validator here. This particular validator has, in traditional old Metagraph, had 399,288 Tau delegated to them en route. And they would have had over here 399,000. But we notice now they have over here 72,000 and it's denominated in the alpha symbol. This is their total stake weight. And what this means is that their root stake, that is 399,000, is actually only worth 71,000 within this subnet. Now, why does this matter? Your stake weight within a subnet, if subnets are prioritizing bandwidth by stake, it affects it. It affects the weight with which you set consensus, your vTrust. And what it essentially does is it starts to say that alpha is more important than root stake. And this is one of the narratives, and I think one of the reasons I wanted to start putting together these calls to explain these kinds of concepts that might be escaping people. What the foundation have done is they have set the value of root stake at 0.18. That means your root stake is only worth 18% as a validator compared to your alpha stake. So this particular validator key has 399,000 Tau, but the alpha stake they have is only 621. And this means that their total root weight, which is this times 0.18, plus this is 71,000. Whereas this, let's give another one, so I can look at them on the validators. I'll come into this more on the validators, because what I want to show you here is this is a single validator. But when we drop this down, you will see that here are all of the validators that are delegated to, what subnet are we looking for? We're looking at 4. So this is, I believe, this is the key operated by Manifold. It's the most reliable key on this subnet, and therefore it has a huge, that's not actually not a very nice thing to say, is it? Apologies to other keys that have the same vTrust and are doing very well. But it does seem to be the popular key on this subnet because it has 4 million root stake. Now, those that watch child keys will know that anything over sort of 1.2 million is generally a fairly dominant key. I'm not going to get into the politics of overweighting to a single validator or the number of validators. I'm just going to show data and the facts that are here. And on this particular subnet, you can see that this key here itself only has 24 Tau on the root, but they have a lot of alpha. So this is the owner key. I think we will find that this is the owner key because, or they've been buying up a huge amount of alpha. Doug, alpha symbol in We're doing good at this, aren't we? We only got this really working and all the data perfect today. We need the alpha symbol in the alpha column on the drop down for char keys. We're going to be here all night, aren't we? Please confirm with a thumbs up. Okay. Thank you, sir. So what we see here, take my jumper off, is all of the validators that are delegating to manifold. On this particular, and you know, as myself being one of them, we look at when we child key, if we're not able to directly extract value from a subnet through either selling the commodity, I think the next thing to do is to look at who is actually bringing the most value to this subnet. And when I spoke to Caro about this, the key that was most likely to need the most amount of support to bring the most kind of value is manifold, because they are directly the ones pushing this subnet. So, you know, for those of us that care about the overall quality of BitTensor, you should really be supporting a subnet to do the best. So it's often different subnets have different architecture, but speaking to a subnet owner to say, hey, look, you know, who is it that needs supporting on this subnet? Sometimes it can be distributed. Yeah, it's different for every subnet, but in this particular instance, it was manifold. And so this is why you'll see most people, including OpenTensor, myself, Roundtable 21, were all delegated. Now, what we can see here, and this is quite interesting, and we look at this more when we look at the validator data, is the root alpha split of these validators. So what you see here is who's got the most alpha, whose nominators most believe in this subnet. Now, of course, that is also relative to the amount of nominators, so it wouldn't be very fair for me to say, there we are, we've got 3.95%, therefore, sorry, we've got 5,800, therefore we have more. So this is why we put this in, because what this shows is that regardless of how many nominators we have or how much Tao, 3.95% of Taostats nominations or delegated stake on this subnet is coming from alpha owners. Guru also. So you start to see which, and I think also Roundtable 21, and of course OTF. Well, where are you, OTF? Can't see you. Missed you. Where have they gone? In my glass on. Here we go. 1.35 tensorplex. So you start to see which validators are actually actively engaging or encouraging in the transition to alpha, shall we call it. And I believe, without going into too much detail, I think this is an important metric to watch. It's funny, I'll admit, especially when we get onto the validator side, this is at the moment what I consider to be, for me personally, one of the more competitive metrics. And I know it's been picked up on by other validators. When we get to the validator page, I'll discuss it in a little bit more detail. But we can just see the breakdown here. We can see how much of the proportion of the stake they're giving, if they have it split, and the take. This is, I think, more important to those doing that investigation as to who's actually powering the keys. On some subnets, so if we look at something like, I should have, let's take 50, let's take 8. I think 8 has a pretty good distribution. Subnet 8, this doesn't work on a line. So let's look at the Metagraph for something like 8. Here we have a greater set of validators. And again, the top one on this will be OTF, very reliable validators, so they are attracting a large amount of stake. We start to see the amount of sort of investigation into how much child keying is being used, and it is being used a lot. And yeah, other than that, we have our normal Metagraph. Let's just check over any Metagraph questions. But will the little info buttons be live on the next release to remind us of all the tips and what it's talking about? All the info buttons on here. So we have a lot of info buttons. These things here. Oh, they're not. Oh, yeah, they are there. I was going to say volume, mount trade low over the last 24 hours. So we've got them in there, and we need to add more and more. And some of them will just say what the well, I don't know how else we explain max supply. We do have to go through and update a lot of the volume, a lot of the info buttons, but a lot of them are there. Yes, we can put them in for the Metagraph. I think we are probably more likely to make an animated video that explains a lot of this, because having an eye for every single one was increasing column width. which was driving me a little bit crazy. And we've got some more Metagraph updates coming to make it more intuitive. As I say, the value now was to ensure that all of the data was there, and then we can move forward from there. Other than that, it's the normal stuff you expected to see on the subnet page: hyperparameters, registration data, subnet distribution curve, the minor weights. We've also kept in the historical emissions for now, although they probably won't last too much longer because they're fairly irrelevant unless you wanted to see what was being said previously. So that brings me on to, great pleasure, one of my favorite pages, the validators page. Let's close some tabs here. I need to get through this tonight. And as I say, I really like looking at this for one real reason. It's about the adoption of alpha. We don't want people aping in mindlessly. Yes, Armin, customized columns are coming. It was suggested about 3 weeks before dTao. Customizing columns and then also being able to add entities into the custom dashboard. But we realized that we needed to get everything in and then strip back and add functionality. There will absolutely be customized columns where you can then maintain your column selection either through cookies or, although some people are averse to it, having an account and logging in. So your own preferences and ways of viewing Taostats can be maintained, and you can create dashboards that show just the data that you want to see in Taostats. So yes, those things are coming. So now we're back onto the validators page. And the reason I like this is because, you know, we've been having these discussions, especially looking at things like dTao. And I found that when you looked at dTao, which was the, I was going to say something controversial there, was the ability to use your stake to assign weights on the validator that you were on, but without a risk-reward structure that dTao holds. And we looked at the uptake of it, and it was somewhere around 15%. So that meant on, for instance, Tau 5 or Datura, only about 15% of the stake was actually voting on the weights. I think it peaked to about 20, sometimes 25 on some of them. And it was an interesting metric as to how much stake would get involved in voting without a risk reward, and it helped to set some benchmarks for the uptake of dTao. And what we can see here with this with the alpha proportions is the percentage of validator stake that is assigned to dTao. And this, to me, is one of the most beautiful metrics to watch evolving. Yes, there's a competitive side of me that's looking at the actual amounts, but that's just a business, a competitive business a metric, and not something that matters particularly in this call. What matters in the wild is that validators are making an effort to encourage dTao uptake. And of course, we're doing it ourselves through the subnet trading, the delegation. I know that, and it's an interesting one, watched it go up in the last 24 hours. Roundtable, I believe, have partnered with Hotkey Swap, which is a really nice UI for also trading the dTao tokens and some other functionality. So you've seen it immediately there. Alpha, I'm going to call it alpha encouragement, alpha participation go up. Yuma have also believe they have. I saw someone mention the front end. I also assumed they just decided to start deploying some capital. So it's obviously Open Tensor as the trusted guardians of the network. Sounds like Masters of the Universe, guardians of the network. And as we go through all the validators, you can start to see now much more consistently, and this has really picked up in the last 24 hours. There were validators, there was quite a few validators with a very slow uptake, and now it seems that across all the validators, we're all starting to edge towards or cross over the 2% mark, which shows a really nice uptake in dTao. And this is the metric that I'm going to be watching. And also within here, we then have a few updates. With that in mind, you've got your Tau rank and your alpha rank. We've put that differential between who's got the most root stake, but also who has the most alpha stake. It doesn't make a difference to APRs particularly. It may make a difference to swaying of APRs, but we don't have, because you can now stake and unstake at will, and the period of time for which I believe we don't have that issue of non-viable stake, whereas previously, if you staked or unstaked from a validator to a validator, so if you staked a large amount to a validator in the middle of their rewards epoch, although your stake was used to generate rewards for them, that wasn't you didn't get any of that until the next rewards epoch, which for a validator was I think around 7,201 blocks. So that would mean if I came along and I staked 10,000 Tau to Taostats, although that 10,000 Tau would reap rewards, I wouldn't get any until tomorrow. So those rewards that my 10,000 Tau had would pass along to others. Now, the one thing you'll notice we have done at the moment is to not go around shouting about APRs. I think someone yes, alpha does get percentage bigger every day, but I think there's more of an impact from purchasing at the moment, and it's not an exponential growth. We'll see how that figure moves. So yeah, what we have done with Taostats, we've removed a few things from this page. First, you'll see we've removed weight copying as a metric. It was something that, surprisingly, although most of you think that I love it and put it in there just to annoy people, it wasn't something I like doing. Each time, and when we redesigned Taostats, I put out the poll to ask if we should or shouldn't label weight copiers, and it was, I think it was something like 95% to 5% that we should. But it's not, the chain doesn't say this person is called this validator is copying weights. You can look at the chain data and say it's clear that person is, but there is no flag on there that says weight copier. And I've always wanted Taostats to just display what is the truth, the accurate data truth versus opinion. And I feel that with the fact that you can now buy alpha or stake alpha to any validator across any subnets produces such wild variances in your potential APR or returns. It's ludicrous to say this is the APR. What we will do is have a look at the root APR and plot the average root APR against alpha, so we can see as root APR diminishes and we start to see when alpha as a whole becomes more profitable. That's a very fair thing to look at, and something that I know both Jacob and Doug has posted charts about, how over time the profits from root will diminish below the profits from alpha. Now, of course, that's not that that's theoretical, but that also depends very much on how you interact with alpha. You can still lose your money in alpha after this point, if you make bad decisions. So this is something that we didn't want to jump into and say, oh my God, dTao's launched. Now, most people who watched their wallets and calculated their returns will have noted that on the first day of dTao, if you just stayed in root, I think you got up to between 3 and 4 times the divs that you would have got previous to dTao. I think by the second day it was down to 3 times. Now we're about 2.5 times, just under 2.5 times the divs. So that is now dropping down again. Why? This was simply because all of those who were aping into these pools, they weren't just losing Tau. It wasn't like they were throwing Tau. They were essentially throwing Tau into a fire, but the person scooping up the ashes of Tau from that fire were the root delegators. And so the root delegators have been the beneficiaries of the aping of subnet owners in order to, or subnet owners, subnet believers in order to support emissions, and that's flowed back down to root. I didn't want to jump. We've had enough on our plates this week, or the end of last week and this week, to jump into, as I say, posting APRs. APR is an annual figure. If you take what you earned today and minus it by 360, times it by 365, you will get an APR related figure. But as Ben has very courteously put, you cannot calculate an annual return in a system designed to change drastically over a year. So what we're trying to do, which I'll show you in just a moment when we go into the dashboard, is instead of saying what you might earn, we want to show you what you did earn. We can show you an APR figure from what you did. So if you want to look at what you earned in the last day and say, tell me what that is in APR, I'll tell it to you, or we'll tell it to you. If you want to look at what you earned in the last week and say, tell me what that is in APR, we will tell it to you. But we won't sit here and say, if you make this action, you will get this APR. I'm sure other people will. There are still sites out there that are trying to show these yields. It was something that I wasn't so comfortable with even pre dTao, because of course it depended very much on validator performance. Now it depends on validator, not only validator performance, but more importantly, the performance of the subnet that you're in. So going through to a singular validator. Let's have a look. This page we were working on a lot today. Now this I'm going to be quite quick with this because I think this only matters to a small amount of people on this call, and some of them may have already fallen over and gone to sleep. And that's the validators themselves. And what we've tried to do, and this isn't perfect yet, is to redesign this so you can look at all of the keys and performance metrics across all of your types, and the types being whether you are running infra or whether you are running. So here are infra validators, and then here are child key validators. So you can quickly analyze performance issues, but as Amin suggested, we need some filters, we need some custom columns, and essentially we also need alerts. So given what we've explained about all of this data, we have displayed this for each key within the validator landscape. And then that's what it is. And so for validators, rather than having boxes, we now have it in a tabular form, which we did have before, but we have more to add to this in order to make it more usable. Chimpanzee is typing. I wonder if I should. I've been doing this an hour, so I think I want to switch over to the dashboard. I'm just see to the dashboard. Oh, before I go to the dashboard, on the back of the dashboard, this is the one. There you go. This is the one I've been playing around with. This was actually pushed out before dTao. The truth is, this should have been done 6 months ago. It's not easy building a team. Not every decision you make works out the way you want it to. And we had aspirations to have this as a much more functional product, but the path to building a strong team is paved with people who get fired. There you go, you get the truth. And so this hasn't reached the point where we felt that we wanted to shout too much about it. However, why not use a short-term return like percentage of an alpha you get in a day? Well, what we want to do, Chimpanzee, if I want to look at what this wallet made in a day, I can switch to the daily view. Okay, I've been messing around with this wallet. This wallet in the last day made 78 USD. We need to, I've been just staking and unstaking and not doing anything, so 0.78, but over a week, it made $7. Now, if I want to look at that $7 as a percentage of the total that's in here, minusing transactions in and out, I can tell you an APR percentage, and I can say in the last week this wallet made X APR, and that is what we will do. This product needs to be built out because we now need to include your full alpha balance, and we also need to include profit and loss for your alpha, taking into account the trades you've made. So this, what we would like to do with this is to build this into a personal portfolio manager, so you can track your various wallets and see how they're performing. You can split into different wallets for different strategies if you want. It's really going to be up to you, but we're going to build this out and then also likely provide an alternative, a third method within here to maybe rebalance or get rid of or add to a delegated stake. So this is very much a work in progress, but it is there, and I do use it. If you're not being overly active with your wallet, especially if you're a root staker, this is actually incredibly useful. Over the course of this wallet's been sitting there stagnant for a very long time. So at a year ago, I had 5.3 Tau in this wallet, and I now have 5.7 Tau in this wallet. You can work out what this wallet's made from having a balance of $2,000. It's made 136. I can't claim it's always been making very good decisions. This is just a demo wallet I use, and it hasn't had everything staked in it. And what you can also see, obviously, is which goes in line with the fluctuations of Tau price, is your actual dollar value of your wallet alongside the Tau value of the wallet. Tau goes up, dollar doesn't always go up. What I would like to talk about, though, the very controversial Delegation app. This is what we've got here. And I want to show it to people who potentially, those that have come here, had been used to using our old delegates.taostats, where you simply selected your validator and you delegated. But we were building this for the very real possibility, if the foundation decided that everybody would earn, regardless of if you were staked on root or not, you would earn either airdrop or dust, it's the same thing, whatever you want to call it, you would earn your rewards across all subnets. Now, there was an interesting advantage to that I quite liked, which is it forced interaction in dTao. Everyone would have been earning all of their dividends in alpha, and you then would have had to have made conscious choices as to which alpha you sold, which alpha you kept, whether you moved some subnets into other subnets. And as a result of that, this slider-based interface where you can select a subnet, a validator on that subnet, and add it, and you can add multiple ones. So you can select any validator. Yes, we have listened to feedback. We are going to let you set a global validator that will override all of these, but you can select a different one for every single one. So I can take Guru here, and I can even go twice to different validators on the same subnet. And what this enables you to do is to essentially balance your stake across, and this is the intention of it, across the different subnets based on either percentage or Tau amount. Now, the reason I wanted to do this was very often portfolio allocation, especially for long-term investments, is a percentage. You know, you might say, right, I've got 20% of my net worth in Bitcoin and 80% of my net worth in Tau. Regardless of what the price of either of them do, I would like to maintain that balance. So if Tau goes up hugely in value and I end up with 90% of my net worth in Tau and only 10% in Bitcoin, I want to rebalance that. I want to move it back to 80-20. And this is what I felt people would want to do. I felt that people would probably invest in a handful of subnets, and they would want to have a look at the percentage. And let's say I keep this, relatively even keel. If I wake up one morning and I suddenly see it's like that, I've got, wow, Targon's performed really well. I've got much more of an allocation in there, but I want to stick to my percentage allocation. So I'm going to rebalance that back down to root and prop trading. I might say, oh, you know what, though, I'm feeling that root is now underperforming and I want to make that swap over. I'm going to diminish my allocation in root now down to around 40%. And I want to maintain the same allocation in all of the other subnets that I've decided to invest in. I wanted you to hear this from me because this is the idea as to how this works. Of course, the reality is most people woke up on the morning of dTao to something like this and said, here's my root allocation. What the hell do I do to unstake? And they were very confused. And I get it. I almost felt that in order to manage your root allocation, one of the best places to go would be just go to root. And you could then connect your wallet and you could see what you have available to stake and what you have available staked to unstake, and you could literally have just bought and sold in here. So I put out a tweet that did that, as I felt it was a simple way to see, and if you change your validator you would see what you had allocated to any other validator. But I understand that was not a necessarily intuitive. But those that came here that had, like, if you know, fortunately I don't have any root stake with Guru or with Chat with Hal, so you don't see anything there. But if I did, you would. So I have the root stake with Taostats. If I want to remove my root stake, I simply slide that down all the way to 0, click next, and it will confirm 0 root, so minus 11.97 tau with 0% slippage, and I can then confirm that transaction. I know it said delegate all, and we've now changed that to next and confirm. And it will only do what you confirm. What I can also do is I can minimize or maximize the amount of tau I want to put from this wallet in there, and I can now add a subnet. Oh, not this one. I can now add a subnet. In this instance, 19. Keyboard not working. It's off on Taostats, and I can say, right, I want to put in, and what I can do here is watch the slippage. I say, hold on a minute, is that a tolerant amount of slippage? I probably don't want to do that. It's a lot of slippage, but I want to just move some of my root allocation over. And again, that will say, right, well, if you do that, we're taking 0.67 off root with this particular allocation and adding 2 to 19, which now the right. Now, there were some issues with this. The issues being that if you were making a singular transaction, it was trying to batch it in a utility, which meant which we've now fixed, their singular transactions are treated as single transactions. And we still have a few gremlins to work through. But as of today, ledger support for Talisman is now working. Just find my team message. There you go. I still have some dust on a couple of these subnets that I need to work out why that shows a 0, even though there's Targon, I've got a small amount, but these two I have 0. I have a feeling there is still some very minute dust in here, which is why we're seeing this, which, as I say, we're going to work through. On the update list from this, I will have to just flick in Discord to my, but there were a load of updates that here we go, daily dev. Yeah, the batch staking, if it's a single call, a single transaction is done. The buttons have been updated to make them more intuitive. The issue with Talisman and Ledger has been fixed. And we are now looking into Nova Wallet, full mobile compatibility, because it was wrongly assumed that without the browser extensions, that mobile usage of this would not be something that would be an immediate priority. But that's a shortcoming on our part to not realize that Nova, in fact, has its own built-in browser and will allow you to interact with this. So we'll be getting through that tomorrow. Yep. Let's say I want to reduce my root allocation, but I don't want to increase to 19 or condenses, but just shoots and Targon. I can lock certain subnets. Do that. It hates me, doesn't it? Oh, it hates me. There you go. And you can then proportion, so you can lock certain ones and remove them from the transaction. It will just maintain that proportion. And you can also, if you say, look, I just don't want to deal with this, I just want to add something to condenses, I can actually get rid of it and just, I've locked it, haven't I? And just deal with condenses. So I can even do this and just deal with one slider. And the thing to bear in mind is whatever, when you go to next, you see here is the action that will be taken. If it's not listed here, what this gives you is a summary. So there are actually some intuitive ways that you can play around with this. And when I was trying to rebalance some alpha stake from Taostats Validator, which has alpha on all 64, I was actually starting to play around, especially with removing all sliders but the ones that I wanted to deal with, either for undelegating or delegating stake. And I do feel like there is a lot of additional functionality that needs to be added to this in terms of how it works, but you can be a little bit creative with it as well. The thing to bear in mind and to remember is whatever you see here when you click next is what's going to happen. And whatever you do, whatever you delete, as soon as you reset, it will reset to your wallet's current stake snapshot, essentially. So you will always get what is on your wallet at this given time. Was that good enough, Doug? If you only want to add 2.2 to Targon, you can click in the thing here, and you can, so we've got 0.1, so you can now put it to 0.3 and hit enter, and you're going to add 0.2. I can't click in there. We need to make that better. And you can also do that
In
via
that,
alpha. No, I can't.
in that situation, a fact like if you've got some free balance that you want to add just to one thing, at the moment you have to lock the rest of them, and then you type in that box, and it stops the others rebalancing.
Yep. Or I've just been deleting the others, and
Yeah.
then just dealing with that, which then you can then assign balance from yours that they'll still keep the proportion. Actually, I can put that all the way up and I can do whatever I like here. And I'm only adding 1.22. I click next. And even though I said, oh, I want to make more available, it's only 1.22 to Targon. That's what's happening. And that's the important thing. This confirmation screen, regardless of what you do with the sliders, is going to help you to confirm what it is you're going to do. Thanks, Keith. We are trying. You can use the arrows. Yep. Which arrows? These ones. This one will allow you to select the validator, of course, at any time. I mean, if we had have got this out before dTao, one of the beautiful things to do would have been to take your Tao. Let's do this. And en route in the olden days would have been to select Taostats, select Guru, select one more, Datura. Already selected. All right, so let's just use Guru and Taostats and say, well, hold on a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to 50-50 them and 50-50 them, and then delegate and come back a week later. And instead of wondering whether the non-per KT over the week was good enough and if the stats were correct, you would have just looked at which one got you more Tao. Which one did you have more Tao in? And then you could decide to rebalance to one or the other. And make choices and see if that was consistent. So what we're trying to do is give you the power through the data to make the decisions that you see fit, because I think everybody's strategy for dTao is going to be slightly different. There are people running automated scripts, and let me tell you, people running automated scripts are still taking chances. They are still making choices as to the parameters of those scripts based on what they perceive as future value and what they perceive as future market conditions. That's not to say that they're right or wrong or that their technical talents give them an advantage over you. And there are others who are waiting. There are others who are taking sort of reverse strategies to this. And many people's belief on where subnet valuation goes is it's different. I believe that what dTao does is it provides the mechanisms for bit tensor valuation to be naturally and organically defined through market dynamics. Now, many people might argue that all markets can be manipulated, and so why is this one any different? That is true, but the market still finds an equilibrium. But what it doesn't do is suddenly create, this is my personal opinion, suddenly create infinite value rampant through BitTensor. The value of BitTensor subnets in reality is exactly the same as it was on Thursday or Wednesday. What it does now is remove any barriers to value attribution that existed in the old system where 10 validators or 12 validators, 15 validators were setting the valuation. And it now allows the natural dynamics of everyone to participate in that. But it's still up to subnets to keep coming forward and building. And, dTao has launch has been it's been very successful and smooth. And we now have to go back to building. We now have to go back to subnet value creation, innovation. I'm very excited for some of the new subnets coming out. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say on that. But I'm very excited for some of the innovation that's going to be happening in subnets. I've seen some people in Twitter sort of say, well, you know, EVM was a failure and dTao was a failure because price didn't go up. All they have done is open and facilitate more avenues of development throughout the network. And there are a lot of interesting things coming to BitTensor now that can be even more functionally complete. And yeah, it's exciting times. Well, I'm going to open it to questions. I'm done talking. That was a long time. 22. Trash can is a bit intimidating at first, gives the perception of removing the alpha from that line. It's true. It is. I agree. I think the thing that I need to make clearer is that this summary is what matters and that your state is always preserved. We'll probably add something to our docs that will give a walkthrough of this. But if you understand the stress of developing under dTao, you know, it was very much a situation of Jacob saying to us, we're not going to launch until you guys are ready, but how soon can you be ready? Okay, then, but what if we do it a week earlier? And it getting these finished and everything finished was really up to the line and even beyond the line. The line was crossed on Thursday night, and members of my team were working extremely hard on Friday. Some of them refused to go to the zoo with their kids on Saturday. I'm joking, I'm not. And yeah, and have been working very hard ever since. I obviously refused to let anyone work or acknowledge them online on Sunday because people need to step away from the computer, but the team are working very hard, as are other teams. Don't get me wrong. Shout out to everybody else who managed to get various interfaces and trading terminals off the ground. It hasn't been easy at all. So even those that had difficulties initially deserve full respect and kudos for getting this all off the ground. I smile, Armin, when you say smooth launch. It was stressful to say the least. Doug, a quick query for stage meeting today. Can you please let us know how emissions from root subnet is entering the alpha pool, is increasing the proportion of alpha in the pool, thereby decreasing the alpha costs? I support the subnet emissions. I suppose I guess that's it. Subnet emissions will keep on reducing every week. Would appreciate if you know anything about it. Doug, do you want to take that one or shall I? Drop me in it there. God, this subnet dynamic. This is a really good one. Why don't you download the new subnet pools video, or watch the new subnet pools video by Tau Templar and Taostats, which is now live, which Doug will link to below in a minute, which will explain the subnet pools to you. It is terrible to say it because I pride myself on being able to explain everything in Taostats. And over the last month, I think there's so much changing within dTao. It was just what do we need to show and how are we going to understand and show it to people? And we'll figure out not what it means, but you know, how it's affecting things once it's happening. The design, I'm not going to say change, but evolved a lot. But then let's have a look. Let's have a look at this subnet. So the question is, emissions from the root are entering the alpha pool. So you have root emissions entering the alpha pool within the proportion. And Ben, you may actually know this and save my ass a little bit more, because I know they spoke about a couple of different mechanisms where there would come a crossover point where tau wasn't emitted, alpha was, or alpha was, tau wasn't. But at this stage, I have to say, I'm probably, for once, not the best person to answer this question. Okay, so if we look at something like, so for something like Targon, where we have their emissions are 1.4K tau per day, 84% of that, so let's say 800 and let's call it 1,000 tau for now, 848 tau is emitted into the pool, and 151.5, sorry, other way around, 848 alpha emitted into the pool, and no, explain this one to me. So if nothing was to happen right now, if no one was to trade in and out of a given subnet like this, what would happen is the alpha in the pool, assuming the majority of stakeholders in this pool, or people who are delegated to it were delegated through root, the tau in the pool would diminish and the alpha in the pool would increase. However, when the majority of people hold alpha, the tau in the pool will increase and the alpha in the pool will diminish, thus pushing up the price of alpha.
Yes.
People on the call going, hold on a minute, didn't they build this? No, we are not from Open Tensor Foundation. We build the data, the ability for you to show the data. Yeah.
The problem is the mechanics around how that emission works change quite a lot later on. So whilst, yeah, we do show the data of a lot of things, we look at the final storage values, some of the underlying maths that leads to those storage values.
There is math in the white paper for this. But it's easier to watch. Where I like to watch what's going on. But yeah, I guess that is the mechanism of it, is that the more you have, the more on a subnet, the more of the delegation to that subnet that is an alpha versus root, the better, essentially. And I wonder, are we showing that as such? I guess this is a representation of it, but it's not, is it? If we were to look at the total stake to this subnet and balance root against
Yeah, the only thing that really matters is how much tau is staked into a subnet. And that used to be a very, very clear relationship between the price, but because of the moving averages, it got a little bit flexible. But still, the amount of tau in a subnet drives the price and drives the emissions. It's offset by the moving average. So
the amount of tau in terms of liquidity, or the amount of tau in terms of tau?
the amount of tau someone has bought alpha with. So when you buy alpha, you're staking that tau. So you're locking your tau into a subnet. So the amount of tau that's locked into the subnet determines the value of the subnet, really. I mean, there's the moving average, but if you just forget about moving averages for a bit, because all that does is delay reality.
Okay.
The amount of
the tau in the pool in this one, for instance, is 3.76K. But the problem is, if 80% of the people that delegate to the subnet are delegated through root, then there is more sell pressure because with root delegators, their alpha is sold immediately for tau. So it's pulling tau out of the pool. So in order for prices to stabilize, the tau in the pool needs to show an increasing trajectory and essentially cross over of 50%. Is this a very important metric, the crossing over of 50, sort of 50-50 tau alpha in the pool?
Yeah, there's a more. Yeah, so there's the more important metric of the root weight. So yeah, you're right. The root nominators are drawing tau out of a subnet. But that starts at 18 and that drops down. I'm not sure what it drops down to exactly, Doug. You'll probably know that one. But the weight of the root stake, because that keeps dropping, the drawing of tau out of a subnet will slow down over time, and eventually the alpha will take over, and eventually root will become meaningless. But at the minute, because everyone's in root, and root's 18%, 18% of everything is still 90 odd percent. It's still really high, but it's still drawing tau out of the subnets. but it
Can I
will.
pick up on one thing you said there, that the root weight is changing? I thought that was a set parameter, the 0.18.
Doug, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that will drop down to 0 eventually.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Don't tell them our secrets. Okay.
So that crossover point is actually based on people's actions. It's not based on their manipulation of root weight.
No, and it's also potentially subnet subnet specific. I mean, we're looking at that for the network as a whole, but in some ways it's also subnet specific. So in although you're delegated to root, that covers all subnets. There'll come a point where certain subnets will be, should we say, alpha positive or alpha advantageous sooner than others. You heard it here first. Right, I think on that note, hour and a half, in case anyone's listening to this in the car on the way to work tomorrow, we should call it a day. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, chimpanzee. The intersection currently is 65 days. We will try and get a dynamic version of that up, but yeah, it's liable to change, so it wouldn't be very prudent to predict it, but we will keep watching it. Thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure from all the team at Taostats. We continue to serve and be there for you. Yeah, it's a pleasure. We're going to have to do this more often. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, team.